So Anthropic just launched Claude Design, and everybody is calling it a Figma killer. I'm a UX designer, and I'm going to tell you exactly what Claude Design is, who should be using it, and why a lot of you are about to use it wrong. Now, Claude Design is a new feature, and really what people are using it for and excited about is the fact that it can now design a UI interface for a website. And still, as a UX designer, there are substantial use cases in which I believe Claude Design is useful. Things like solopreneurs that really just want to get their ideas out and maybe communicate that then to a developer. Or even designers in the early stages of ideation when they want to just really get their ideas out, see several different mock-ups, and really understand a direction before they commit to something like Figma. Another group might be marketers or content creators that need a website very quickly for their business. Another group is going to be students and learners, people who are just trying to understand what design is, how it works, and how an AI tool like Claude can actually turn an idea into reality before reverse engineering that in the tool like Figma. Now, to kind of test this out, I'm going to do what most people would do, which is put in a prompt and ask Claude to create a website. For me, I'm going to ask it to create a website for my UX bootcamp. The first thing that you'll notice that it does is it will ask me clarifying questions. Again, with Claude, Claude is really great for really trying to understand what it is that you're trying to do. So I'm just going to answer it with just say, book some sales calls. How many pages do you want? I'm just going to say a single landing page is fine for now. And then what should be most prominent? I'm going to say student outcomes, the curriculum, and the story. One of the reasons why I feel like Claude Design is problematic specifically for aspiring UX designers is because what Claude Design is doing is not UX design, it is web design. Starting off with a short prompt, answering some clarifying questions is not UX. Now, the reason why I have to call this out is because, like I mentioned earlier, people are referring to Claude Design as a Figma killer, which is just not true. Claude Design is for concepts. Figma is for creating designs that are ready to ship. This is pretty generic and pretty basic. And one of the reasons why I want to talk to aspiring UX designers specifically is because with the rise of a lot of these AI tools that we now have access to, there's going to be a lot of feeling like you are efficient in a particular field or industry that you're not actually efficient in. UX design consists of so much before you actually get to the design phase. The design portion of UX actually happens in the middle of the UX process. Even though it has the word design in it, it is not something that takes place first. The first things that you're doing as a UX designer is you're really trying to understand what the problem is. What's the problem that we're actually trying to solve? If a UX bootcamp founder came to me and said, hey, can you create a website for me? I wouldn't start with the colors. I wouldn't start with, so what do you want your website to be on? I would start with, what problem are you actually trying to solve? And although that may seem like a question that doesn't really make any sense because you may be thinking, well, just create me a website for my company, that question has to be answered. And that's why I specifically want to talk to my aspiring UX designers. Because if you are looking at a tool like Lovable or a tool like Claude Design and you are thinking that you no longer have to understand the elements of color, of typography, of balance or space, all of these elements that create a good design, you're wrong. And yes, we have all the aspects of UX design that happen before the design. Things like we talked about, like defining the problem, synthesizing research. But we must understand that there are other elements of design that we can't be reliant on a tool to get right for us. There's something else that you can do, which is where you actually take elements from other websites, feed it into Claude, and tell it to replicate it so that you can also see that reflected on your website. Now, what I did was I just fed Claude 2 examples from my own website to see if it can actually put it into this Claude Design website. I think this is an interesting way to actually use Claude. However, where I will say that this could become problematic is if you use a tool like Claude, which is a machine, and you are feeding it different elements from different sites, you will end up having a website or a UI that absolutely makes no sense. There's no cohesion, there's no flow, it doesn't make any sense. And so that's why typically when we're designing, we start with something like a design system that we can actually pull from. And if you don't have a design system, you want to make sure that you are pulling from the actual research, the synthesizing that you've done, the iteration that you've done, the sketches that you've done. You want to make sure that your final output is something that is cohesive and not something that feels choppy and all over the place. Okay, so I'm just going through this and I specifically want to see where it added in those testimonial and CTA sections. Okay, so it pulled over some of the blue Not exactly what I was looking for. I was kind of wanting the image of the person who took the course to be here, but let's just keep scrolling and see what else they have. Looking for the CTA section. Okay, so here's the CTA section that it pulled over. Interesting. Pulled over some of the elements from my website as well, but still feels like a very basic website. Now, obviously, I know that the more information I feed it or the more assets that I give it, like images and logos and fonts, it will be able to come up with a site that has more personality. But for just a simple prompt, this is what it spit out. So here's the deal. Back in the day, UX designers were called web designers. We were the people that would create a website for a customer or a company. The reason why we are now user experience designers is because, again, the design is in the middle of our process. It's not in the beginning. So here's my take on Claude Design. Do I think that it is a useful tool? Yes. Do I also think that it will be misused? Absolutely. And I do think that it is up to us UX designers to call this kind of stuff out. Claude Design is a tool, but it is not the tool. If you are an aspiring UX designer, the tools that you must have is the understanding of what user experience design actually is, regardless of how you actually create the design. And before UX designers, we were actually called web designers, which means that we were creating essentially whatever our client or the company wanted. Now with UX design, we actually study human behavior and why people actually make the decisions that they make. That is something that cannot be replicated with an AI tool. So if you're using it as a starting point to explore ideas, you're using it right. But if you're using it as an actual endpoint to ship a product, you've skipped the entire job. Pretty design is not good design, and it never was. And no AI tool is going to change that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.